You know, the myth of Narcissus is one of those stories we all think we have a firm grip on.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the classic cautionary tale. You have this incredibly handsome guy who falls in love with his own reflection in a lake, gets so completely captivated that he falls in and drowns.
And a flower grows in that spot.
Exactly. End of story. It's the ultimate warning about the dangers of vanity.
Yeah, I mean, it's deeply embedded in our culture. It's literally the root of the word narcissist. We just use it as a shorthand for self-obsession.
But there is an alternate ending to that myth, and it entirely shifts the axis of the story.
Oh, I love this version.
Right. So in this version, after Narcissus dies, the goddesses of the forest travel to the lake, and they find that the fresh water has transformed into a pool of salty tears.
Wow.
And the goddesses say to the lake, "Of course you're weeping for Narcissus. After all, you were the only one who could see his beauty up close every single day."
And the lake's response here is what makes this version so profound. The lake asks, was Narcissus beautiful?
Which is such a crazy response.
Right. The goddesses are completely stunned. They point out the obvious. They say, he knelt on your banks every day. And the lake says, I weep for Narcissus, but I never noticed he was beautiful. I weep because every time he knelt beside me, I could see my own beauty reflected in the depths of his eyes.
It completely flips the perspective. It takes a story about self-obsession and turns it into a story about how we find our own identity reflected back at us by the world.
Exactly.
And that exact story serves as the opening to Paulo Coelho's classic of self-discovery, The Alchemist. So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, our goal is to extract the core philosophical mechanisms from this tale for you.
It really is a masterclass in examining how we project our internal state onto our external reality.
Yeah, so we are officially entering audiobook mode to explore not just what happens in this story, but the underlying psychology of why it has resonated with so many of you.
It's going to be a good one.
To lay the groundwork, we start with our protagonist. He's a young Andalusian shepherd named Santiago, and we find him sleeping in an abandoned, ruined church.
With a massive sycamore tree growing right through where the roof used to be.
Yeah, it's such a striking image. He's a good shepherd, you know, he has everything he needs, but there is this baseline restlessness in him. And he starts noticing a deeply unsettling pattern in his sheep. They are completely locked into a routine. They don't look at the scenery. They don't learn anything about the world they are walking through.
They just blindly follow him.
Right, because he is the mechanism that delivers food and water.
What's fascinating here is the psychological mirror Coelho is holding up right at the start. Santiago realizes that if he suddenly became a predator and started slaughtering his flock, they wouldn't even notice until most of them are gone.
That is so dark, but true.
It is. They have entirely lost their survival instincts. It basically traded their natural awareness and their freedom for the biological comfort of guaranteed nourishment.
Okay, let's unpack this, because when I first read that passage, I didn't see sheep on a hillside. I saw the modern corporate ecosystem.
Oh, wow.
Right. I saw the reality of staying in a perfectly safe, air-conditioned job that slowly drains your vitality simply because the direct deposit hits every 2 weeks.
The golden handcuffs.
Exactly. You give them your time, your energy, maybe your creative drive, entirely for the comfort of the pasture. It's an evolutionary trap.
Because when our basic caloric and shelter needs are met, our brains actively suppress the risk-taking mechanism.
Yeah, and Santiago realizing this about the animals he protects forces him to look at his own psychological complacency.
And breaking out of that complacency requires an external shock. For Santiago, that shock comes at a town plaza when he meets a mysterious old man named King Melchizedek.
Okay.
Right, and Melchizedek introduces the foundational philosophy of the entire narrative, the personal legend.
Which is what, exactly?
It is essentially your true north. It's the core purpose you inherently understood when you were a child. He explains that when we are young, our personal legend is obvious to us. We aren't afraid to dream.
Right. Kids always know what they want to be.
Exactly. But as time passes, a subtle, invisible force begins to condition us, convincing us that achieving that true purpose is practically impossible.
Which feeds directly into what the king calls the world's greatest lie.
Yes.
The lie is the deeply ingrained belief that at a certain point in our adult lives, we lose agency. We just lose control of our trajectory, and our lives are suddenly dictated by fate or the economy or our obligations.
And Melchizedek challenges this aggressively. He tells Santiago that realizing one's personal legend is a person's only true obligation. And he introduces this idea of cosmic momentum, that when you truly want something, all the universe conspires to help you achieve it.
Wait, I'm struggling with this premise.
Why is that?
Well, the idea of just dropping a stable, safe life to chase a childhood dream sounds like terrible advice. I mean, in the story, the king points out a baker in the plaza, right?
It does, yeah.
The baker wanted to travel when he was young, but he chose to save his money, buy a bakery, and build a stable life so he could travel when he's old. Isn't that just being a responsible adult? Why does the story villainize a guy just for planning for his retirement?
Well, the story isn't villainizing stability, it's critiquing the underlying motivation.
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the king explains exactly why the baker made that choice. And it actually wasn't out of pure practicality. It was driven by social validation.
I see.
Yeah, in that culture, society dictates that bakers are important. Bakers have property, whereas shepherds are vagabonds. Parents want their daughters to marry bakers.
So it was about status.
Exactly. The baker experienced cognitive dissonance. His internal drive was to wander, but his external environment rewarded settling down. He didn't just delay his dream, he traded his internal purpose for the external approval of his neighbors.
He let societal expectations override his internal code.
Precisely.
But I appreciate that the book doesn't advocate for pure, reckless abandonment of responsibility either.
No, it doesn't.
To clarify this balance, the king tells this brilliant micro-story about a boy who visits a wise man in a lavish palace to learn the secret of happiness.
I love this part.
It's so good. So the wise man hands the boy a spoon holding 2 drops of oil and tells him to wander the palace, but whatever he does, he must not spill the oil.
Right.
And the boy is so hyper-focused on balancing the spoon that he completely misses the gorgeous artwork and gardens.
He sees nothing.
Nothing at all. When the wise man tells him to go back and actually look at the palace, the boy relaxes, takes in the beauty, but looks down and realizes he spilled the oil.
It's a flawless metaphor for the human condition.
Yeah.
The wise man explains that the secret of happiness is to see all the marvels of the world, but never to forget drops of oil on the spoon. It's the tension between vision and execution.
That makes a lot of sense.
You have to pursue your grand personal legend and experience the richness of life, but you cannot abandon the daily mechanics that sustain you. If you only look at the oil, you live a narrow, anxious life.
But if you only look at the palace, you drop your responsibilities and your foundation crumbles.
Exactly.
So Santiago decides to take the leap. He sells his flock, buys a boat ticket, and lands in Tangier. He has effectively balanced the oil and looked at the palace.
For a minute, at least.
Right, because instead of the universe immediately rolling out the red carpet, the reality of stepping out of the comfort zone hits him like a freight train. He gets robbed of every single penny on day one.
It is a brutal introduction to the real world. He is stranded in a foreign market, he doesn't speak Arabic, and he is entirely destitute.
And the evolutionary pull to retreat to the comfort of the sheep pasture is at its absolute maximum.
Oh, for sure. But this is where Coelho introduces a critical concept regarding human agency. Santiago has to define his own narrative.
Yeah, he's sitting in the plaza feeling sorry for himself, and he makes a conscious psychological pivot.
A huge pivot.
He decides he can either view himself as a tragic victim of a thief in a strange land, or he can view himself as an adventurer in quest of his treasure.
And it's the exact same set of physical circumstances, but an entirely different psychological framework.
Which raises an important question about how we frame our own setbacks.
Definitely. By choosing the framework of the adventurer, he reclaims his agency. And because he drops the victim mentality, his perception opens up, allowing him to spot an opportunity to work for a crystal merchant at the top of a desolate hill.
Now, the crystal merchant is an incredibly complex character. He serves as the ultimate foil to Santiago.
He really does.
He is a devout man whose lifelong stated dream is to make the pilgrimage to Mecca. He has the financial means to do it, the shop is successful enough, but he actively refuses to go.
If you are listening to this right now and you have a business plan that's been sitting in a folder on your desktop for 4 years,
right,
or a script you outline but never write, you are the crystal merchant.
Ouch. But yes.
The merchant admits something terrifying to Santiago. He says it's the thought of Mecca that keeps him alive. He is fundamentally terrified that if he actually takes the trip and realizes his dream, he will have nothing left to hope for. He will have no structural motivation left to endure his daily life.
The psychological safety of an unfulfilled dream is like a powerful narcotic. As long as the dream remains in the future, it is perfect.
It can't be ruined by delayed flights, bad weather, or the realization that achieving a goal doesn't magically fix your internal flaws.
Exactly. Reality is messy, but the fantasy is pristine. But Santiago's arrival entirely disrupts the merchant's stagnant safety. Santiago starts innovating.
He can't help himself.
Right. He builds an outdoor display case. He starts serving mint tea in the crystal glasses to the travelers climbing the hill. And the business scales massively.
And while Santiago is transforming the business, he's absorbing a profound concept from the merchant's culture, maktub, which translates to, it is written.
And I have to admit, this concept confused me.
Really? How so?
Well, if the book is all about chasing your destiny and taking action, how does a fatalistic idea like it is written fit in? Doesn't that just give you an excuse to sit back and do nothing?
I see what you mean. It seems contradictory on the surface. But maktub, in this context, isn't about a pre-written script where your choices don't matter. Think of it more like the underlying physics engine of a video game. The laws of gravity, the mechanics of the world, the ultimate interconnectedness of events, those are written.
The parameters are set.
Exactly. But how you navigate that world, the choices you make within that framework, are entirely your own. It's a concept meant to provide comfort during chaos.
So when Santiago gets robbed, or when a sandstorm hits, maktub means the event isn't a random, meaningless punishment.
Right. It's a necessary variable in the larger equation of his journey.
It's a supportive net, not a cage.
Beautifully put. Yeah. And through this process, Santiago realizes he's fluent in something far more universal than Arabic or Spanish. He calls it the language without words.
Which is the language of enthusiasm.
Exactly. It's the language of things accomplished with love and deep purpose. When you act with genuine alignment toward a goal, your intention communicates itself across cultural and linguistic barriers.
It's how he understood his sheep, and it's how he fundamentally understood the needs of the crystal shop's customers. Armed with his earnings from the crystal shop and a solidified mindset, Santiago finally leaves the city and heads into the vast, uncharted territory of the Sahara Desert.
A huge transition.
He joins a caravan, and the structured rules of the city completely evaporate. And out here, he meets an Englishman who is dedicating his life to studying alchemy.
The Englishman is such an interesting counterpoint.
He really is. He approaches reality through intense intellect. He travels with a massive trunk of dense books, constantly reading about the Philosopher's Stone and the elixir of life, trying to decode complex symbols.
And Santiago, conversely, puts his book away. He just watches the desert. He observes the camels. He listens to the wind.
What we are looking at here is a clash of epistemologies, which is just a fancy way of saying a clash in how we acquire knowledge.
Yeah.
The Englishman believes knowledge is extracted through rigid intellectual study of the past. Santiago is developing an intuitive epistemology. He believes knowledge is actively occurring in the present environment, communicated through ermines and observation.
Right.
But surely structured, academic learning has value. Why does the narrative seem to suggest that just staring blankly at a sand dune is somehow superior to studying the accumulated knowledge of the past?
Well, the text isn't actually anti-intellectual. I mean, the alchemist himself later confirms that the Englishman is on the right track.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, the flaw isn't in the books. The flaw is that the Englishman uses his intellect as a defense mechanism against experiencing the world. His knowledge isolates him.
Ah, I get it.
He is so buried in ancient texts about the desert that he completely ignores the actual physical desert he is riding through.
Wow.
The story emphasizes that knowledge is entirely sterile if it isolates you from what Coelho calls the soul of the world.
Okay, let's define that, because soul of the world gets referenced constantly. It feels like this underlying mycelial network.
That's a great way to describe it.
It's the idea that human intention, nature, the elements, they aren't separate. They are part of one living, breathing ecosystem. And when you tap into that through the language of enthusiasm, you aren't fighting the current of reality anymore. You are riding it.
Precisely. And someone who understands how to ride that current perfectly is the camel driver they travel with.
The camel driver is amazing.
He is. This is a man who lost his entire livelihood, his farm, his orchard, to a catastrophic Nile flood. But instead of being consumed by bitterness or anxiety about the future, he adopted a profound stoicism.
Right.
He tells Santiago, if you can concentrate always on the present, you'll be a happy man.
He drops the psychological weight of the past and the future. He says if it's a day to march, he marches. If the caravan gets attacked and it's a day to die, then it's as good a day to die as any other.
It's intense, but it is the ultimate freedom from anxiety.
And this ties into a crucial lesson about the timeline of success. Melchizedek mentioned the principle of favorability, which we commonly call beginner's luck. When you first step onto the path of your personal legend, the universe often gives you a taste of early success to whet your appetite.
But beginner's luck doesn't last.
Never does.
To survive the long, grueling middle of the journey, You have to adopt the camel driver's mindset. You have to anchor yourself entirely in the present, because the present is the only place where you can actually take action.
And just as Santiago masters living in the present delivers the ultimate test of his resolve.
The oasis.
Yes. The caravan arrives at an oasis to wait out a tribal war in the desert. And at this oasis, Santiago meets Fatima. He experiences the pure language of the world in the form of love.
It's an instant, profound connection.
And it immediately threatens his entire journey. He tells Fatima he wants to abandon his quest and stay at the oasis with her. He rationalizes that he has already found his ultimate treasure in her.
While he's wrestling with this, he reads an omen in the desert, 2 hawks fighting, which reveals an impending surprise attack on the neutral oasis.
Right. He warns the tribal chieftains, saving countless lives. And this bold action finally brings him face to face with the man he's been searching for, the alchemist.
An intimidating, deeply powerful figure.
Yeah, and the alchemist delivers a brutal reality check. He tells Santiago he must leave the safety of the oasis, leave his new wealth, leave his prestigious new position as a counselor, and leave Fatima to go find his treasure at the pyramids.
The Alchemist outlines the exact psychological trajectory of what will happen if Santiago stays. He prophesies a timeline of regret.
It's so grim.
It is. Year 1 will be pure bliss. In year 2, the memory of his abandoned personal legend will resurface, but he'll ignore it. By year 3, the omens will actively haunt him.
Because he knows he's ignoring them.
Exactly. He'll pace the oasis at night, and Fatima will begin to feel an underlying guilt, knowing she was the anchor that kept him from his destiny.
And by year 4...
the omens will permanently abandon him. He'll lose his intuitive edge, lose his position as counselor, and spend the remainder of his life knowing he's settled.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because my initial reaction was that leaving her is fundamentally selfish.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
It feels like a justification for abandoning a peaceful family life just because you have a burning ambition to be a CEO or a famous artist. It feels cold.
It is a difficult concept to digest, but it hinges on how we define love. The Alchemist's core philosophy is that true love, the kind that speaks the language of the world, never requires a person to shrink themselves or abandon their ultimate purpose.
Okay.
If it demands that you sacrifice your potential for the sake of proximity, it isn't expansive love, it's codependency.
And Fatima actually voices this herself. As a woman of the desert, she understands the mechanics of their world. She tells Santiago that the desert takes their men away and they must go away in order to return.
She refuses to be the mechanism that stops his growth.
Exactly. If you truly love someone, you want them to actualize their fullest potential. So Santiago makes the agonizing choice to ride back into the desert with the alchemist.
And you would assume that after making the ultimate sacrifice, the universe would clear the path to the finish line.
Not even close.
No.
He faces the most extreme friction of the entire journey. As they travel, his heart becomes incredibly anxious. It starts feeding him fear, telling him stories of men who failed to find their treasures.
And the alchemist gives him a piece of advice that alters the way you view anxiety forever. He says, tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself.
Wow. Because no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams. It's the anticipation of pain that paralyzes us, not the pain itself.
And the universe immediately calls their bluff. They're captured by a hostile military camp. To save their lives, the alchemist literally hands over all of Santiago's gold.
And then he casually informs the tribal commander that Santiago is a powerful alchemist who will transform himself into the wind in 3 days, or they can execute them both.
No pressure.
Right, the ultimate sink or swim moment. Santiago is paralyzed. He has absolutely no idea how to turn into the wind.
But this crisis forces the absolute climax of his internal evolution. On the 3rd day, standing on a cliff in front of the tribal army, he doesn't try to use a magic spell.
He engages in a profound, escalating dialogue with the elements. He speaks to the desert, trying to explain love. Then he speaks to the wind, then to the sun.
And finally, he pushes past the physical elements and communes with the hand that wrote all.
He reaches the purest understanding of the soul of the world. He realizes that the ecosystem of reality isn't something outside of him to be manipulated. It is a network that he is fundamentally a part of.
The soul of God, the soul of the desert, and his own soul are not separate entities.
It's a metaphor for radical empathy and integration. He doesn't overpower nature to create the massive sandstorm. He dissolves the boundary between himself and nature.
He understands his place in the universe so completely that he collaborates with the elements to transport himself across the camp.
Which brings us to the actual mechanism of alchemy. The Alchemist explains earlier that alchemy isn't a parlor trick designed to turn literal lead into literal gold so you can get rich.
No, alchemy is a metaphor for evolution. Lead plays its specific role until the environment no longer needs it, and then it is required to evolve into gold.
When a human being strives to become better when they commit to the friction of evolving from lead to gold, everything in their surrounding environment is forced to elevate as well.
It's a beautiful concept.
So Santiago survives. He finally reaches the pyramids of Egypt, and he falls to his knees in the sand, weeping at their massive beauty. And where his tears fall, he sees a scarab beetle, the ultimate omen of life.
He followed the omens, he endured the friction, and he made it.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. How does this archaic story of shepherds and alchemy map onto your reality?
So what does this all mean?
It means your journey is about identifying your baseline complacency, the sheep pasture. It's about understanding that when you finally take a risk and inevitably get knocked down in your own version of Tangier, you have to actively reject the victim narrative and adopt the framework of the adventurer.
It means keeping the oil balanced on the spoon, maintaining your daily obligations without losing sight of your ultimate purpose. It means refusing to hide behind the psychological safety of an unfulfilled dream, like the crystal merchant.
And it means understanding that the friction you experience isn't proof that you are on the wrong path. It is the mechanism of your evolution.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought that expands on the mechanics of this journey. We discussed beginner's luck, right?
Yeah, the early wins.
Exactly. How the universe gives you an early win to get you moving. But there is a dark side to beginner's luck.
What do you mean?
Well, because it's so easy early on, it plants a subconscious expectation that the entire journey will be linear. So when you inevitably hit the massive resistance right at the end when the palm trees are finally visible on the horizon, you assume something is deeply wrong.
You think the universe is telling you to stop?
But the Alchemist teaches that this final, brutal friction is actually the universe's final exam. It is testing everything you learned along the way to ensure you are actually capable of holding the treasure you are about to receive.
Think about the biggest obstacle in your life right now. The thing causing you the most anxiety. Are you misinterpreting the final exam as a stop sign?
That's the real question.
Are you standing feet away from your pyramids, letting the fear of suffering convince you to turn back to the oasis? That is the real test. We hope this deep dive equipped you with a new framework for reading your own omens.
We really do.
If it did, please hit subscribe, leave a review, and share your thoughts on your own personal legends with us. We love exploring these concepts with you.
Until next time, stay observant.
And remember, the language of the world responds to enthusiasm. Don't let the comfort of the pasture keep you from the desert. Go find your pyramids.